They say you move to the lake to get some peace, but let me tell you, peace is the last thing Silver Pine Lake handed me. First week here, a food truck parks on my lawn, balloons bobbing off my battered old mailbox, and strangers laughing like they've always belonged. Somebody, don't ask me who, signed my name to a permission slip for an event I never heard of, let alone agreed to. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a quiet place with loons and still water. It was a place where folks made plans for your life, whether you liked it or not. I'm Henry Caldwell, but friends just call me Hank if you don't mind a little informality. I spent 35 years in and out of courtrooms. Thought if I bought a house up here, some silence might patch up a few old wounds, or at least give me space to figure out who I was without all the noise. Didn't fix losing June, but I guess nothing could. I was sanding down a rough bookshelf for her urn, something to keep my hands busy, when I came home from the hardware store to see folding chairs and a white tent mushrooming out across my lawn. There's this woman, clipboard in hand, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she chirps, waving her phone. She's got an invite for an event, my name headlining it. I shut the gate and told them no, simple as that. Figured it was over. You'd think that would have done the trick, right? You ever dealt with contracts? You get to know that truth always leaves a trail. Timestamps, IP addresses, that weird feeling in your gut when something doesn't add up. Lena, my niece, sharp as a tack, works paralegal jobs all over the state, comes over, sits at my kitchen table, and pulls up the so-called permission slip. This wasn't here. A month ago, she says, eyes narrow. And look, signature's been copy-pasted. The save date doesn't match. Even the email address was local, somebody trying to play small-town god. It felt like watching somebody else grab the steering wheel of your life and jerk it sideways. But I wasn't ready for how fast friendly faces turned sour. The HOA, headed by Marjorie Hale, picture-perfect hair, always with a pie chart or a petition, sends me a notice, $2,000 a day for unauthorized use of my own yard. Flyers pop up under everyone's doors, calling me stingy, hiding behind grief. All that. Next thing, people at the post office start going quiet when I walk in. Rumors move faster than wildfire, you know what I mean? Now, you fight fire with what you've got. In my case, it was records, permits, inspection receipts, camera footage, the works. One night, my porch camera catches two board members sneaking by the generator. Flip the switch. One says, "Teach him a lesson." They both laugh. Lena cups her hand over her mouth, says, "That's a recording, Hank. Call the cops." But I didn't want to be the guy who called in sirens on neighbors who'd loan me a snow shovel. Truth is, I just wanted the facts on my side. So, I got organized, old habit from my courthouse days. Built a binder thick as a phone book, exhibits, timelines, screenshots, email headers. The whole digital paper trail. I stopped trying to disappear. When the HOA tried to stage a welcome event on my lawn, thinking they could shame me with an audience, I showed up to the community hall, binder in hand, sat front and center where nobody could miss me. Marjorie starts with syrup and bylaws, but when I played the porch audio, when I scrolled through the metadata and pointed to the forged PDF, the room changed. Faces tightened up. Folks who'd been ready to smirk now just stared at their shoes. "You're being dramatic, Henry." Marjorie hisses at me later, but she can't unplay the audio. Facts are heavy. They land on the table and stay put. Here's where it gets interesting. Eddie, this guy with a laugh like a busted lawnmower, stands up and says, "I've known Hank since the day he moved in. Helped him haul lumber, fixed my fence for free. He's the real deal." Suddenly, folks start remembering the times I helped clear a downed tree or patched a neighbor's roof after a storm. Funny how a community forgets until you give them a reason to remember. Still, the fines keep coming. Whisper campaigns say I'm difficult. So, I filed a small claims case. In court, the theater drops out. It's just facts and evidence. The judge flips through my binder, listens to the porch audio, checks the server logs. One look at Marjorie and her pals, then a ruling. HOA has to eat the fines, pay me damages, and, here's the kicker, change the bylaws so nobody can throw an event on private land without notarized owner permission. Marjorie resigns a week later. Her smile frozen as ever, packing up her folders like nothing happened. Board votes in new blood. The neighborhood rules get tightened up. Finally, something good coming out of a headache. And it wasn't revenge, not really. More like calling a foul and making sure it's whistled. The weight lifted. House felt less like a bunker, more like a place you could just breathe. I finished June's bookshelf, sanded it smooth so it felt like a handshake. Put her urn on top where the morning sun just brushes the brass. Lena moved back to the city, swearing she'd never look at server logs again, but she calls every Sunday just to check in. Now, there's a twist I didn't see coming. Eddie starts dropping by with his old hound, talking less about HOA nonsense and more about fishing. Turns out, half the people who thought I was unneighborly just wanted someone to stand up so they could stop ducking. When you show your receipts, a few good folks will still have your back. And grief, well, it doesn't go away, but it softens a little when you've got something to build, something to defend, even if it's just a shelf. There was one more showdown at the next meeting. Marjorie's right-hand woman tried to corner me, all fired up about procedure. She said, "You're making this personal." And I just looked at her and said, "Of course it's personal. It's my home." That room went quiet as church on Monday. The audio didn't need me to argue. Policy bent under the weight of the truth. Even in small claims, the facts just stacked up until there was nothing left to debate. No victory parade, just the quiet work of fixing what matters. Eddie's dog snoring on my porch, Lena's calls on speaker while I sand the last edge of a board. The sense that maybe I could let my guard down, just a little. If you've ever felt small in your own yard, let me tell you, patience and paperwork are the strongest walls you can build. Guard your records, trust the neighbor who shows up in a storm, and don't let anybody else write your story for you. So, here's my question for you. Was that justice, or did we just sweep the mess under the rug until spring brings another storm? Drop a comment. Tell me if you've ever had to fight for your piece of ground, or if you think all these rules really make us safer. And if you felt this story, share it around, because sometimes a little sunlight is all it takes to change a neighborhood. Funny thing about neighborhoods, once you stand up for yourself, people start seeing you with new eyes. Not everybody, mind you, but enough that it shifts the air when you walk into the corner store or grab a coffee at the diner. There was this morning, not long after the storm had blown over, when I was hauling groceries out of my truck and caught old Mrs. Voss waving from her porch. First time she'd ever done that, and she'd lived across the road since the Reagan years. I just tipped my hat, try not to make a big deal. Maybe folks figured I was stubborn enough not to go away, so they might as well get used to me. Of course, not everyone's memory is that short. There was still the crowd who looked right past me, like I was just part of the landscape, background noise, easy to ignore. And the new HOA board? Well, they were on their best behavior, handing out newsletters like party favors and talking up transparency every time they got a chance. But if you listened close, you could hear the nervousness, like maybe the ghosts of Marjorie's mess were still rattling around in the file cabinets. Lena, bless her, kept sending me links to legal articles and cases where little guys like us actually won. "You're kind of famous now, you know," she'd tease. Local legend. Yeah, right. Fame isn't all it's cracked up to be when it comes with side glances and whispers at the post office. But the next twist hit one Thursday afternoon. "Son. Hi. Sky so blue it hurt your teeth." There's a knock on my door, sharp and impatient, like someone's got a bone to pick. It's Gary Linwood. Never seen him at a meeting, never heard him say more than 5 words. Tall, heavy-set guy, eyes like burnt coffee, reputation for minding his own business. But this time, he's holding a stack of papers and looking at me like I'm supposed to have the answers. "You got a minute?" he says, not quite asking. Turns out, the board's new rules were suddenly getting enforced for everybody, and Gary, who'd built a shed out back for his tools, was looking at a fine. Big enough to choke a horse. No hearing, no warning, just a letter and a deadline. "You got through it," he says, shoving the letter my way. "How'd you do it? It's weird, you know? Being the person people turn to after all the times you felt like the outsider." But I told him what worked for me. Every document, every receipt, every email, keep it all. Write down who said what. When. It's boring, but it's bulletproof. We ended up sitting at my kitchen table, just like I'd done with Lena, comparing notes. For the first time since moving here, I saw what it meant for a community to wake up. Not because I made a scene, though, sure, it started that way, but because now the board had to answer to the rest of us, not just run things from behind closed doors. That's when the story really cracked open. Gary's case wasn't the only one. Folks started coming by. Maya, who runs the daycare, and old Sam from the hardware store. Even the new couple who'd moved in by the cove. Each of them had something. A complaint, a story, a question about their rights. I became the unofficial records guy, the one who helped translate legalese into plain English. It wasn't what I'd planned for retirement, but I'll tell you, it felt good, using those old skills for something real, something that mattered in the day-to-day grind. You'd think the board would push back harder, try to shut us up, but maybe they were just too tired, or maybe they knew the tide had turned. At the next meeting, instead of finger-pointing, people asked questions. And the new chair, a wiry, fast-talking woman named Dee, actually answered them. I watched her face when Gary got up to speak about his shed. She didn't flinch, didn't duck the issue. Instead, she promised a review of every fine issued under the new policy. For the first time, it felt like folks were on the same side of the table. Still, there's no such thing as perfect harmony. The rumors, the old grudges, they're stubborn. A few months later, a post pops up on the neighborhood forum, anonymous, of course, accusing me of stirring the pot, just for the thrill. Claims I'm trying to tear down the community that welcomed me. I laughed out loud reading it, but I'll admit, it stung, just a little. It's easy for people to forget the mess that came before. Easier still to blame the guy who pointed out the leak in the roof. But that's how it goes, isn't it? Change is messy. You don't get the last word. You just keep showing up, keep being honest. Keep answering the knock at your door, even if it's just to lend a neighbor your hammer or walk them through a confusing letter from the HOA. And I kept building. Bookshelves, birdhouses, a new bench for the dock. June's urn stayed where the morning light found it. But now, when I dusted it, I felt a little less alone. Sundays, Lena still calls, voice bright and full of stories. Eddie and his dog became regulars, stopping by for coffee and talk about fishing or bad TV. Even Marjorie, believe it or not, sent a card at Christmas. No apology, just a simple wish for peace. I almost smiled. So what do you think? Does standing up really make a difference? Or does it just paint a target on your back for the next round? I'm still not sure. But I know this. Silence doesn't fix much. And sometimes all it takes is one stubborn old man with a binder full of facts to start a ripple that changes everything. Drop your thoughts below. Ever been the one who wouldn't back down? Did it pay off? Or just make the fights nastier? And hey, if you've got a story about small-town drama or neighborhood justice, I want to hear it. Like, share, stir the pot, little yourself. Because sometimes the only way to fix things is to let the truth out where everyone can see it.